you very much. We're back for the panel session. Hello, my name is Haydn Washington. I'm an environmental scientist and the other co-director of CASSE New South Wales. And today we have an interesting panel on finding hope, change for a sustainable economy. And today, joining us, we have Zahra Kumarasinhe, getting the name right, Bob Debus. Zahra is a climate activist who's just finished at Willoughby Girls High School. We have Bob Debus, the former Minister for the Environment in the Labor government. We have Anna Schlunke, who is a sustainable building professional and activist for an ecologically sustainable economy, and of course Phil, you know from the previous talk, as an ecological economist. So we've got a little less time now because Phil's talk was so interesting, we just had so many questions, but that's what we want, of course, to get those questions out there. But first of all, so there's really 4 questions I'm going to be asking of the panel. If we have any time left, we'll take questions to the panel. And the first one is, okay, we've just had a great talk about issues to do with what a sustainable economy should be. But when we look at what many think is an unsustainable growth economy, where do each of you find hope? And I might start with actually the youngest person on the panel, is Zahra, and ask where you find hope.
Well, I guess from my experience and my knowledge, it would mostly come from what I've been involved with, like the youth movements and I guess the grassroots social movements, like with the climate strikes. And I think that having like a whole social movement that is all advocating for the same issue is really like, I guess I find hope in that when we are faced with all these like horrible statistics and facts about climate change and the adverse effects it's going to have on our earth, and all these young people especially coming together and really raising awareness and standing up for what they think should happen, and pressing the government for, I guess, a more sustainable economy. But I don't really know too much about the economy, but just in general, like, and trying to, I guess, educate others as well, not just the government and not just the economy, but in general, like society, on what we should really be doing to achieve that. I find hope in that because I guess to know that a lot of people are coming together on the same issue and they're really fighting for it and they're not giving up, they're really persisting, and I guess that's what I find.
Thank you. If we pass on to Bob.
Well, I should just mention that I'm in the middle of attending another conference just down the road, which is being run by kind of a think tank affiliated with the Labor Party. And it began just an hour ago, or 2 hours ago now, with a Skype interview with a Skype lecture from Jeremy Rifkin. So any of you who don't know about Jeremy Rifkin, I recommend that you buy his book, The Green New Deal. There are a number of other books as well, which will both frighten you and give you some cause for hope. First cause for hope is exactly what we've been speaking of. Jeremy Rifkin said in the lecture that I just heard that you are part of a social political movement which for the first time in the history of humankind unites the whole world. For the first time in the history of humankind, young people, generation Z. We're running out of letters, aren't we? Young people who are under 40, and especially under 25, are engaged in a kind of politics which has elements that have never before occurred in human history. So that's a pretty big deal. It's also the case that somebody like Rifkin is talking about the emerging economy. So on the one hand, we see even in the last week the onset of levels of environmental crisis that we've kind of been talking about for a long time, but we are seeing, Haydn and I have had several conversations about this, that we are seeing something of a quality that we really haven't experienced before in terms of our own forest fires. And there's a big question about whether we can recover the economy in time to curtail the climate crisis and its biological effects. But Rifkin spoke this morning at length of the changing economy. And he says that no matter what the damn fossil fuel lobby might say to you, they're on the way out. And they're on the way out pretty fast, actually. And that there are massive levels of stranded debt all around the world already. Whole sections of the financial institutions of the world, led by pension funds, are just leaving fossil fuel. And I've read somewhere else that General Electric, which is the company that used to make nuclear power stations, is bankrupt. I also read yesterday that Newsweek, you have to be older than you to know what Newsweek is, but even in my early middle age, Newsweek was the most significant worldwide English language weekly news magazine, and it was sold a little while ago for $1. So Rifkin, along with others, speaks of a massive industrial revolution that's underway as we move. There was one in the 19th century based around steam and the telegraph and that kind of thing, and in Britain began. There was one in the United States in the 20th century based around the telephone and radio and television and cars. And the digital revolution that is now occurring, he believes, is transforming the world economy in the same way. That, as a quick example, Volkswagen has announced that it will make no more internal combustion engine cars after 2027 or 28. And they will build a lot of their cars from print technology using recycled material. So I shouldn't go on too long, but there are massive possibilities for change if we embrace them. In Australia at the moment, what gives me a lot of despair is that politics has in fact regressed astonishingly, and I can't talk about it much without taking sides. I don't think that any political party is free of blame for what's going on, but I don't see how anybody can possibly doubt that the sort of Tony Abbott spectrum in the Conservative Party is responsible for this, and we have to see it flipped over one way or other, and soon. That's enough.
Thank you. Thank you. Where do you find hope, Anna?
I think the first thing that gives me hope is this talk today, and Phil has also videoed it, so I hope that that gets shared as widely as possible, because I think a lot of people should see that. Like, it's a good overview for people who are coming into this fresh, as well as people who know it. The things that give me hope, well, first is that we have the technology we need already. It's not like we haven't got what we need. And other things like the recent, I don't know if you saw Australian Talks on the ABC, where they did a survey and presented some of the results, what people think. And most people do care, it seems, from that. And the government is what they think is very different to the population. So people do want this. And the other bits about that Phil was talking about, that people will probably be better off in a sustainable economy. So we're not asking people to have a really awful life. So those are the things that we can have.
I guess I'll just be repeating a bit of what Anna just said, that my cause for hope is the fact that there is a viable alternative to growth. And I guess what I try to do in my presentation today is demonstrate that you grow the economy up to a point, you can move to a steady state economy, and it doesn't mean that life as we know it comes to an end. We can still enjoy increases in economic welfare through improvements in the quality of what we produce and the way we produce it. And we can alter our preferences in ways so that we have to move away from a lot of economic based pursuits, and we start doing things that are more socially based, and which evidence suggests gives us a psychological boost, which seems to be some aspect of people's well-being that seems to be lacking, and many people believe is a cause for the growth of consumerism. We hear the term retail therapy a lot, which gives you a 5-minute hit, and the next morning if you're depressed because your other aspects of your life haven't been fulfilled, then you need to go shopping the next day. But so I think the hope for me lies in the fact that moving towards a sustainable economy doesn't mean that we're going to be worse off. In fact, I think it would mean we're better off. It would mean avoiding what I would consider to be a regression towards something that is something we would prefer to avoid. So whilst that viable alternative is there, I don't know how much of a window of opportunity there is to move to this viable alternative. If we don't move soon enough, then we'll get to the point where that opportunity goes beyond us, and it will simply be a case of trying to minimise the impact of a deteriorating world. So I think that window of opportunity still exists, and whilst it exists, and it can be shown that an alternative is viable and can make us better off, then I think there's hope. Hope breeds eternal, as I say.
Right, thanks. So how can we, given we have a problem, as I think came out in your talk quite well, that we, as a society overall, we tend to deny that we have the problems that you brought forward. How can we accelerate positive action to overcome denial of our problems? And we might sort of go back in that direction.
These questions, I've seen the questions, they get more and more difficult. How do you accelerate it when it's barely occurring at all? I think there is a need to educate people about what is happening and the viability of a sustainable steady state economy, and so events like today are important. I think it is necessary for people to remain very open-minded. I think if there is a scarcity of something in this modern world, it's not just natural resources, it's humility and modesty. And for some reason, because that seems to be lacking, I find that people are not willing to concede when they don't know something about something that they think they already knew about. I want to make the point that we're all ignoramuses. Every person, some people know a lot about more things than other people, but in general, we're very ignorant about lots of things. We need to accept that. The problem is, I think, that we live in a world where very, very few people know much about the things that really matter. I sometimes have to get my niece to help me on my computer or whatever she can. But that's important if I want to use the computer, but it's not the end of the world. I don't want to sound pretentious, but I guess I've devoted my life to trying to learn about things that matter. Perhaps I've been in a fortunate position. I've never been married, I don't have kids, I've had a bit more spare time on my hands, so I've been able to do this, but we have to recognise that when it comes to a lot of things that matter, we are all quite ignorant. And don't be ashamed if someone says something and it is something that you didn't realise was true in your own mind, and that you have to revise the way you think. If we remain open-minded and modest, then I think we can move forward and we can be educated. but there seems to be this ideological, almost based, defensive type of approach that a lot of people are adopting, and that's not helping things at all. So the way we can accelerate this is we need to be educated, and we need people to be as open-minded as possible.
Yeah, I think following on from what Phil said, we have to make it easy for people to understand this stuff. They're not going to come to us. There's so many things competing for people's time. I don't have a solution apart from being really good communicators, but the other thing maybe is to be more entertaining, because that's what people want to see, that's what you want to share with people. So we can be funny or tell some story as well as just being educational. Another thing, I think you've probably experienced it if you have talked to someone. Well, there's a lot of people that say in the sustainable area, if you mention steady state economy, they look at you like we discussed, thinking you're racist because you talk about population. So I guess reaching out to people who are disgusted with you, but also people who you're disgusted with. I think like if you meet someone who's a coal miner or someone, find out why they do that. Don't just be disgusted with them and what they might not want to be a coal miner, but they have to because they'll lose their house. I guess that sort of thing where you forgive people who disagree with you and who find you disgusting and try and talk to them.
Yes. Bob?
I suppose I half said, or half gave an answer to this in my previous answer. I think that all that you two have said is correct at the level of individual and behaviour and the way one might deal with the group immediately around us. In political terms, we've got to change the milieu, the background belief against which society is operating. We know, in fact, that the majority of people are quite sympathetic to the kind of ideas that we're saying, that we're speaking on now. We probably shouldn't use language that puts them off. It's far better to talk in practical terms rather than slogans. But the key thing is that we must persuade a sufficient number of people in positions of authority, not least at the local level, that the kinds of ideas that we're advancing are true and they've got to be adopted or the world will collapse.
I guess I would have to agree with everyone on this one with that it kind of comes down to the education. For my HSC year, for a majority of it, I did a project on climate change denial, and I kind of found that it really comes down to the social attitudes, because we're finding out all this new stuff about how, there's only 11 years until climate change will become irreversible. And that kind of leads people to, well, it's very scary, first of all. Like, hearing that can make people quite fearful and lead to ignorance and then therefore even lead to denial. So I think we need more education about it earlier on. Like, I was just talking to someone last week, I met someone at a party and they asked me, do you believe in climate change? I was like, yes, how about you? And they said no. So we had a lengthy discussion about it, and they're really quite stubborn with their opinions, saying, oh, it's a natural process, humans doing nothing. So we really need people to understand, first of all, just about climate change. I feel like that's a really big part of it, understanding that it is really mainly human-induced, while it is naturally induced partially, yes, but there's a big part of it that we're contributing to. And I think it shouldn't be really a political issue on that part, just believing it if it's true or not. We need to really help people understand that it is an issue that everyone should be aware about, and instead of, I guess, ignoring the issue, we need to act on it. And while all the youth movements, like I was saying before, is good and getting the momentum, it really needs to be the people in power who are inspired by this to help, I guess, accelerate it and move it forward. Because I think while yes, the climate strikes, they have had a lot of impact, especially with the media. Still, the people, especially the Australian government, hasn't really responded to it the way I guess they've been hoping to. So I guess we need to kind of target them a little bit more, maybe try and work a bit more with the people who are ignoring it and the people who are in fear of the consequences rather than against them, and yeah, I guess push to accelerate that action.
Thank you. So I guess next question would be to ask what aspect of today's talk and discussion is most important for you personally as a path to a sustainable future? So you might go back this way again.
Well, today's talk's been very inspiring for me. I guess I've never really had this discussion, especially about the economy. It's not something I've been exposed to that much. I think really the individual things that we can do to start off in approaching a steady-state economy is good. Like, I guess with the talk about affluence, and I guess that can come down to like materialism and consumerism, just changing our mindset about that. I guess that's something I can more personally do, and I think, yeah, I again haven't really been exposed to this, so I guess just learning about it has been a really great step for me, and I'm sure even just telling my friends and family about this would be really insightful for them as well. But yeah, I think more education about a steady-state economy, because I can't say it's really something I've talked to many people about before. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I guess it's that the idea has been reinforced that the solution to the crisis that is upon us depends absolutely on improving, or its solution depends absolutely on equity, improving, redistributing the wealth of our society. Just as an aside, right now, eight people in the world have as much wealth as the poorest 3.5 billion. And dealing with climate change. So everything depends upon a successful policy and action to reduce inequality and to reduce the effects of climate change.
And I should remind people there will be a workshop this afternoon on equity run by Professor Frank Stillwell. But coming back to which is what's most important for you for a path to the future?
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out to me is well-being. So Richard Heinberg ratings at the end of growth, that when growth becomes no longer possible, what governments can promise instead is to improve our well-being. And a colleague of mine has been working with Project Home Builders to ask him, why don't you sell more sustainable homes? And they were saying, well, customers don't really know or care much about what sustainability means or energy efficiency, but what they do care about as well as bills is their health and comfort and well-being. So that well-being is something that we have and government has to work with. If we can, instead of looking at the money that something's going to, or the cost benefit, looking at the amount of money that the state's going to make because of something, we look at the impact on well-being. I think that's something that, yeah, we've got a hope of introducing.
Okay, well, I guess I'm going to just repeat something I said at the beginning of my presentation, and it would be our obsession with growth, dealing with our obsession with growth. Growth, we can do, as I said, we can do things better, but ultimately, if we continue with this predilection for growth, it will destroy the planet. It's as simple as that. We don't need growth to be better off, as I showed in my presentation. So yeah, that would be what I think is the most important aspect to take home is to do something about our obsession with growth. It's pathological, and not only having social and economic effect, undesirable in many ways. And the Stern review on climate change about 10, 15 years ago showed that if we do nothing about climate change, the economic impact of climate change will exceed the economic impact of doing something. Yes, it will cost us something to do something about climate change, but it will be many times exceeded by the damage of climate change if we do nothing. So growth is not only ecologically destructive, it's economically destructive. So we need to find ways to make the transition to a steady state economy and find ways within that steady state economy, which I talked about in my presentation, to increase economic welfare. It's possible within the confines of a steady state economy.
Thank you. Now, I've saved the easiest question to last. Given that in Australia we tend to often dismiss politics, and whoever you vote for a politician gets elected as if they're all equally bad. So what do you think we can do as politics, and whoever you vote for a politician gets elected as if they're all equally bad? So what do you think we can do as part of the politics of change?
Honestly, you're really asking the wrong person here. I try to not to talk too much about the politics. I basically consider myself to be apolitical. I feel that when I vote that anyone really represents my interests, but I don't really know. I'm a bit concerned that and this, I'm not blaming the politicians here, but I have a feeling that our political institutions fail us. I think they need to be revised and reformed. I'm also concerned about the change in the relationship between bureaucrats and politicians. In my presentation, I showed you some genuine progress indicator results. About 2 years ago, I was asked by the South Australian government, with a different government to what we have now, to calculate the GPI for South Australia, and the results were quite interesting. It showed that South Australia's per capita GPI was higher than the rest of Australia, even though South Australia had a lower per capita GSP. I'm a member of a group called the Wakefield Futures Group, which is sort of modelled on the same principle as the Wentworth group of concerned scientists at the national level. This is a group of academics from various fields at the state level, and we've been doing some work for the benefit of sustainability at the South Australian level, and we approached the new state government, and I got an email from a bureaucrat saying that they weren't interested in me doing an updated GPI study because the government's policy is to grow the gross state product, and since the GSP has nothing to do with growing the gross state product, then we don't want you, get you, pay you, well, not that I was paid much at all, virtually nothing, to update the GPI study. So it's quite clear that bureaucrats once used to advise politicians independently, fearlessly, on what they thought was best for the state or the nation or what have you. And now it's quite clear that even though the GPI might be a better indicator of economic welfare than GSP, this particular bureaucratic department wasn't interested in doing a GPI, updated GPI study because it's not the government policy. So it's not about advising the government anymore about what might be best for the state. It's about justifying what the government thinks is best for the state. And I think there's a bit of a problem there. I'm quite concerned about that.
I can do a slightly different perspective on that because I'm working in state government at the moment.
There are exceptions.
No, I'm not in a position to make those decisions at the moment, but the faces that people call the ideas of ministers, so that bureaucrats do find the ideas sometimes ridiculous. But I guess there are other things in there that are tying them in, so there'll be these goals that have been announced and money gets put into them and they can't spend money on other things. I guess what I'm saying is we good to understand what goes on in government. Other examples are if we release a policy, it goes to consultation, and sometimes there'll be a stakeholder group first before the community, and the loudest stakeholder will always have the most influence. So if you want to have influence, you need to join and collaborate with other groups, especially I think I've heard about recently is where, say, sustainability sort of advocates join with social sort of advocates, because they can, you've got to combine your efforts so that you've got the loudest voice if you want to have an impact. But there are also other, I heard one the other day, someone was talking about the latest population projections, and that people in regions were upset and about what they were, because their portion of the GST gets tied to what their population is going to be, according to those projections. So there are things built into the system that make people want growth, and you need to find them. And it's not just the overall aim, there's always little bits on the way that lock you in.
Thank you. Bob, I'm sure you put many years into considering the politics of change.
And as hard as I thought about it, I could never find an easy solution. It's kind of life itself, isn't it? And everybody's just got to do what they have always done to try and bring about change, I suppose, which is to join organisations or some digital arrangement that advocates for change. It is to become part of local groups that actually demonstrate the benefits of change and put pressure on local representatives. It is to, in every way you can, encourage more understanding and education of the circumstance that we're in. I never forget that survey after survey shows that the majority of people in this country would really be quite sympathetic to the sort of things we're speaking about, especially if we don't use jargon about it. But there are special interest groups. They're called the coal industry. But it's important to remember that the coal industry is on much shakier foundations than they ever admit. That community pressures can have an effect upon them. I notice that entitled people in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, for instance, by community action appear to have entirely stopped proposals for coal mines, down around Barrel. Well, those people are confident in the way they proceed in these matters. But they have stopped it. And there's no alternative to sorts of actions that we actually know about, even if it's communicated through new forms of digital media. And there's no substitute for the kind of action that young people are engaged in. We actually need to undermine the mindset that dominates the federal government in particular at the moment. I think, to be honest, the attitudes of the federal government are so contradicted by everyday reality that however strong they look like at this moment, the possibility, you can never entirely predict these things, but the possibility that they will just blow up is quite high.
Well, I guess my perspective on it is that I think the government is quite, like this whole idea of like endless growth and a growth economy, I think that they're quite obsessed with short-term economic benefits, and that like we can see that with the building of the Adani mine or the protests against it, they're still going through with it. So I think we need kind of the transition to an economy that thinks about the long term and like the environmental impacts of what the fossil fuel industry is having. And I guess it's quite a big one. I think there's this thing that I was looking at in my project called confirmation bias, where the government or people in the fossil fuel industry just believe what they want to hear. And so I guess we need people to be, like we were saying before, a little bit more open-minded and more willing to educate themselves on the negative effects that, I guess, that industry will have if we don't transition to a more sustainable economy and more sustainable practices.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'd like to invite panel members whether they have any questions they'd like to ask each other before I throw it open to the whole room. But can't see.
I've done that talk.
All right. Well, we might throw it open to the room. Well, no, I thank you.
Because you probably design those questions, so you've got good answers to what you think.
Well, one thing that just just before we move on to the questions, one thing that did occur to me in terms of the politics of change that I was just talking to someone about yesterday is you've probably all heard of Henry David Thoreau, the famous writer and philosopher, but also Ralph Waldo Emerson was another one that he worked with. And Thoreau was campaigning against slavery, and he got arrested and put into prison. And Emerson went to see him, and Emerson said to Thoreau, "Oh, what are you doing in there?" And Thoreau looked at him and said, "No, what are you doing out there?" So in other words, he wrote a book, Civil Disobedience. In other words, and people like Extinction Rebellion are still doing that civil disobedience, and really, and what we're trying to do here is also build that dialogue on what is a very difficult issue. And for me, I've written a lot about denial, but I think the only solution to denial is dialogue, and that's why we created this forum today. But so they're not really questions, because I think you've all spoken brilliantly in response. But let's throw it over to the room, and we already had one question over there from Scylla.
Looking at the graph that Phil produced earlier, it occurs to me that it's not just a slowing of growth that's needed, it's a fairly major degrowth to get us back to that optimal economic welfare situation. So I'm wondering, A, am I right? Is that true? And secondly, taking on from what Haydn was saying, the current way we're working with trying to do a sort of soft cell education system is clearly being ineffective because we've been going backwards ever since I can remember. Maybe we should all sign up with Extinction Rebellion and start marching in the street and start doing something really much more radical than we're currently doing. Whether anybody has an opinion on that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, when it comes to political activism, I'm not an expert at all. In my younger days, I've been to quite a few protests, probably when trying to introduce, the federal government was trying to introduce HECS. Perhaps I had a personal reason for being involved in those demonstrations, but yeah, I don't know if I'm really the quite the person to make a comment about the best form of political action. I just try to do my bit to try and inform people. As far as degrowth is concerned, well, I guess the issue is that, and a point I made right at the end of my presentation, is it's not GDP that we should be targeting. What we need to do gradually over time is to limit the rate of resource use so that it's again ecologically sustainable, and then GDP is whatever it is. I mean, the more effectively we do things, the higher GDP will be for a given amount of resource use. But the key thing is sustainability. It's about ensuring the rate at which we use resources and generate waste, including CO2 emissions and so forth, is ecologically sustainable. So that's, if there's going to be any degrowth, it's no doubt that we, given that the global ecological footprint is exceeding global biocapacity, we do have to reduce the rate at which we use resources. If we can do things more effectively over time, then it's quite possible that the GDP that we can sustain might be something close, or the gross world product that we can sustain could be quite close to what it is at present. That will depend on how effectively we use those resources that we use, but the key thing is limiting the rate at which we use resources and letting GDP at the national level and gross world product, the global level and gross state product at the state level be what it is. Because ultimately GDP is a means to an end. That's all it is. It should never be seen as an end in itself. It's a means to an end. And we've got a range of goals, and for a poor country, meeting a lot of its ends will mean an increase in its per capita GDP. But for a country like Australia, we can meet a lot of virtually all our ends and goals without having to grow GDP.
I think following from what Phil said about limited resources, we will be unlocking something else which we've been quite unimaginative, I guess, and if we have those limits, because we could be so much more imaginative with the way we do things. We're locked into a really stupid, boring path, and I mean, I suppose everyone's seen when they don't have the right tools or materials to do something, they can find another way, and we're not forcing ourselves to do that, because it'd be like with art, if you tell someone, create a work of art and give no limits, it makes it harder than if you give some constraints, and suddenly their imagination is triggered. And back to what Phil was saying about should we be disrupting things, I guess, I sometimes wonder if we're too nice to have enough impact, but I've seen some protests on stopping the Adani mine where they target businesses who could be contractors and they disrupt their business, and so that's effective. I guess there's more than one way of being disruptive rather than stopping the traffic, but also more targeted. And I know from work that if someone is ringing you and the minister and everything every week, you're going to give them more attention than someone who's nice and waits for you to get to their problem.
So should we be more radical in how we handle it?
We used to be a lot more radical in the 70s than we are now, didn't we? And I'm all for old people like us going into the streets again. Okay? We should be more radical, and we should be protesting and making as much noise as possible about these things and making politics around it. But I was really interested to hear what Phil was just saying then about GMP, because I can't pretend to have any expertise about these, the technical economics, but Ross Garner's just written a book to show pretty convincingly how we could actually improve the productivity and the income from resource exploitation in Australia using renewable energy. Using renewable energy, and by definition vastly cutting the input into the economic process. And there's a whole lot of technology around the corner. Some people think we shouldn't rely on technology, but we've been doing it for 4 centuries now. Malthus would have been right if there hadn't been technological innovation. And the possibility of using renewable energy and reusing waste, if that's the reusing material, is immense, just immense. It could be completely transformative. So an awful lot depends upon the breaking the grip of the fossil fuel industry.
You don't have to. Yeah. Okay. Have we got another question?
I listened this morning to Geraldine. I don't need that. I listened this morning to Geraldine Duke's program, and there was a very interesting discussion on, I think it was just after 8 o'clock. An economist, a woman, and she's written a book, which I unfortunately didn't write down the name of the book. But she talked about the influence of the FANGs and these digital media groups, and how they have used all the best knowledge out of the universities like Stanford on psychological warfare, if you like, manipulating people's artificial wants and creating this environment where people will just shut off as soon as they hear GDP. I live in the northwest of Tasmania, where Senator Landy is, which voted this time for a Liberal Party Member of Parliament, previously Labor. If I started talking like that to anybody in that environment except for a smaller league, they would shut off immediately. So we have to be able to overcome these powerful interests which represent a very tiny percentage of the world population, but in terms of their money and their influence is so great. And this is what Albanese is talking about today, and particularly discussion is the way in which they have changed the whole political discourse so that no one knows what a fact is or what a lie is, and they're quite happy to accept lies as long as it fits in with their preconceptions. So how do we control those small elites which are now running the whole world's discourse? That's the thing that worries me. And us as small groups, I've been an activist all my life. My parents were communists, they were activists all their lives. And I've seen the ebbs and the flows, and I've been part of it. But quite frankly, at the moment, I am in despair because I don't know how we're going to take hold of this agenda. Ordinary people take hold of this agenda. Do you have an answer?
Of course not. but obviously we are, the possibilities for change are much elevated because of the circumstances of crisis that we're in. I was just in northwest Tasmania too, and I know what you mean. But on the other hand, Tasmania has ebbed and flowed, and occasionally there's been absolutely dramatic things happening in Tasmania, like say in the southwest wilderness. I mean,
that was on the outside, Mr. Hawke and others, that a lot of interactive
exactly, it was on the outside, but I recall directly in the year 2006, bear in mind that the government of New South Wales at that time was introducing emissions trading schemes, introducing cap and auction, what have you. Quite a few of them. There's no brown stain in the Sydney autumn sky anymore because a cap and trade scheme took nitrous oxide gases out of the atmosphere. Nobody even noticed most of the time. It was just an ordinary part of government. And what has occurred since then is that there's extraordinary cultural ideological overlay which has aroused hostility to even something like that, which had almost no ideological contact 20 years ago, and is now treated as some kind of plot by Greenies. So you've got to change that atmosphere, but I don't agree with you. I do agree with you. I can't see how it can happen just by individual action. Individual actions and community actions have got to support what will become a political change. And political change is most likely to happen during a crisis. The welfare state was introduced after 2 world wars. Nobody would look at it. Elite power groups would not look at it before then, and after the Second World War they couldn't stop it. Well, now, I might be exaggerating because of my own personal predilections, the psychological consequences of these bushfires, but I do remember that in 2006 when the Millennium Drought was just at its height and Al Gore came to Australia with his famous documentary, and at that time Kevin Rudd took advantage of people's concerns and really ran an effective campaign about fighting climate change. Things went to hell later on, as we know, but on the other hand, towards the end of that period of government, Julia Gillard introduced the Clean Energy Package, which was a world-leading policy. And that, in turn, was repealed. Members of the government that repealed it laughed and danced on the floor of the Parliament when they repealed the carbon price. So what is going on there? What is in their heads? It's not rational. It's not to do with scientific evidence. It's to do with a kind of a cast of mind and a culture and a kind of a tribal war. And that's what's got to be busted. I'm sorry for talking so long, but that's what's got to be busted. And it can only happen if society, if community is active, and people in politics have got their act together. Well, that is to say, those who oppose that kind of ideological or culture war as a substitute for scientific understanding.
I'll just quickly answer back to that, because fascism is just as likely to arise, as we've seen in parts of Europe and elsewhere, as a response as is a good social movement. And honestly, that's the easy way to go. And in Tasmania, they brought new repressive laws in that will jail people who are doing secondary boycotts. And this federal government has got some of the most fascist laws, read Brian Tui's work, in the world. So what we're going to have to face heads getting cracked on the street again, like we did in the 70s, charged by police, people jailed, people lost, people hurt. That's what we're going to have to face.
Agreed.
Would you have another question?
Take another question.
Hannah was saying that we've got everything that we already need, we just need to make it more widely spread in terms of let's just talk about technology, but in another area, regenerative agriculture. If we take that as an example or a point of discussion for the reduction of vegetation across the landscape in New South Wales, just as one state, then can each of the panel talk about something that we could tell as a story that would be then collectively used as part of a narrative to actually profile the positives. So that becomes the main narrative rather than give us in the back on a Sunday morning. All we hear about is farm aid and another semi-trailer load of hay being delivered. But when it shuts down any conversation about regenerative agriculture or Peter Andrews' natural sequence farming, can each of the panel talk about something that would add to that story?
Like the regenerative agriculture in Tasmania and like part of biochar work where we can seed carbon into the soil relatively easily, but as a farmer, let me tell you, there is no profit unless people are prepared to pay farmers to do this work. It'll send you broke. We've spent $700,000 in the last 7 years, the whole of my husband's income. So that's what you've got to be prepared to do, guys. And put your money where your mouth is.
I grew up on a small orchard, so I know something of what you're speaking of. And I cannot say that agriculture is anything like an area of expertise of mine, but I can say that there's really widespread feeling amongst the farming community that they would like to do it, and in fact do much more regenerative agriculture than they did 20 years ago. Much. And a lot of people, you probably have to do it to survive in the longer term now. At the same time, there are big agribusiness companies that are not part of, not really part of that movement, obviously. But it is possible with appropriate levels of, appropriate frameworks set by government for that sort of transformation to happen, and fitfully, it has been occurring.
Well, Stuart's question really, I think, really seemed to me to be about, okay, how do we get a story out there that actually gets to people, gets across, gets past terms of what GPI might be or steady state economy. Like the other day I had a suggestion from someone at the ANSI conference that meant the state was going to be dominating things in a steady state economy. But so what I'll just say is that we recognise in CASSE New South Wales the problem of, okay, we might all agree finite planet, endless growth economy is not going to work, but how do you actually go about getting people to understand their steps? And that's why we created the book Positive Steps to a Steady State Economy, to try and get people to understand that there are these various steps that we can all start to take. And I think we're probably going to have to wind it up now in terms of time. But yeah, that's so it's not totally answering your question, Stuart, but that was our next step to try and get discussion of those positive steps.